Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center, and this next interview brought to you by Mr. Lube. Mr. Lube and Tires. Change your oil, change your wipers event is on now. Visit MrLube.com to download your coupon for a free pair of Goodyear hybrid wiper blades with any oil change, only for a limited time at Mr. Lube with 18 locations in the Lower Mainland. And we're super stoked about this because our buddy Cam Robinson, the director of content director for Elite Prospects, is not only joining us today, he'll be joining us Tuesdays throughout the hockey season. Mr. Robinson from Courtenay, British Columbia. Good to have you back on the show, and very much looking forward to chatting with you every Tuesday.
Thank you for the warm welcome. Yeah, I'm excited to be sitting down with you guys every week and just spitballing on things that are going around with the Canucks and maybe talk some young guys and some current stuff. It's great. I get to flex my NHL muscles a little bit here too.
Yes, that's it. Because we obviously follow all of your work, and it's so outstanding. I was like, I want to hear more from this guy on the Canucks on a week-to-week basis, particularly since he's a British Columbian and paying attention here to the local team.
Yeah, so, I don't think your takes stop when a player turns 20.
That's right. Yeah.
They absolutely do not.
When they get to the NHL, Cam still has takes. Yeah, so
absolutely.
It stands to reason. We'll just start broadly, generally. What do you think of their offseason? What do you think we're looking at in terms of this season and what's in store?
I thought they managed well considering the spot that they were in, right? They mortgaged some future assets to go for a run last year. And it worked to some degree, right? They could have quite easily ended up in the Western Conference final there. And then it really would have looked like a serious win. But, losing some of those free agents, that was very likely. I think that they did pretty well to replace some of the skill, some of the toughness on the blue line. Obviously the question mark is who's going to be healthy in net. And I think that that's going to be a massive kind of storyline throughout the season and as they push towards the playoffs as well. But no, I was okay with the offseason. I think that they were active and that they were wise with their money they're spending too. They didn't just go out and spend the entire budget on a Jake Gensel, which I think would have moved the needle for them. But they picked a younger asset in Jake Debrusk, someone who's maybe a little more physically inclined, who could mesh well in that top six, all around that top nine. So I thought they did well with their targeting, and then they retained a player like Joshua that they put a focus on kind of the snarl, and then they have a lot of skill already in house with that core. So I think it should be a good mix, and that it'll be difficult to replicate the success that they had in the regular season last year, but not to say that they can't get near that level again.
Before we prognosticate forward, do we put the word like miraculous in front of the fact they got to 109 points, given the depths of coming out of the Jim Benning era? Like I don't think many people had them at 109 points that quickly coming out of that era.
I'm sure no one did. Even maybe the most diehard Canucks fans were maybe being like, well, this could be a 100-point team early on last season. And it's like, well, maybe they could. No, I think that was everything went right. Obviously Quinn Hughes had just a monster season. Miller is a horse. Pettersson, even down the backstretch, fading. But then, Connor Garland was excellent. Joshua was excellent. Susie was excellent. Myers had his career year, right? Like Zadorov stepping in, everything really kind of went right for them. Demko playing at a Vezina level throughout the entire season. You can't ask for that. You can hope for it. And so again, moving into this year is that fans can hope for that to happen again and all the pieces to click and everything to fall into place. But more realistically is that there's going to be some hiccups along the way. There's going to be some injuries. There's going to be some dry spells. And so 109 points is just a massive accomplishment, especially for a team that's not, a juggernaut, that's not looked at to go to a conference final or go to a cup final year over year in their prime window. But another 100-point season, I think, is very doable.
105 is that like what should they be thinking in their head?
I think they're above a wild card team, and so those wild card teams are going to be in the high 90s, and I think that they should be able to contend for another division title. Whether or not they can pull it out with what Edmonton's done offensively, they're going to be putting up some pretty impressive scores this year. So maybe that's second in the division and in that kind of low 100 zone.
So is Edmonton the team to beat in the West, Cam, as you see it?
Yeah. I mean, yes, I still I have such a difficult time overlooking Colorado and Dallas. Those two teams for me, I think that they're so impressive as well. And more so, Edmonton just has so much offense, right? But what if that breaks down, if it slows up, or God forbid there's an injury to one of those top two players, I think that they're susceptible to maybe sliding down a little bit. So I like those three teams, Colorado, Dallas, and Edmonton, to really be the cream of the Western Conference. And then there's that kind of next meaty zone with Vancouver included there.
Let's drill down a little further here. I think it's indisputable they're deeper at wing after all the work they did at wing. How do you feel about the center ice spots and about the collection of defensemen they have for this year?
Well, I mean, when you can roll out Miller and Pettersson 1-2, I mean, that's a pretty fortunate position for any club to be in. And I think that Elias Pettersson is going to, personally, I think he's going to have a statement season where, now he's got the paycheck. People are wondering, is this going to be the type of player we saw in the playoffs long term, and they have an anchor on the books? I think he's going to probably take that personally, and he's going to come back and have a really big and impressive season. So to roll out two, potential all-star centers down the middle, that's going to be great. Teddy Blucher on that third line. I mean, that's that third line with Garland and Joshua, has a lot of potential to be a real, kind of difference maker down the lineup. So I like their depth. You got Suter still as well that can play the middle of the ice. So I think down the middle, they're fine. On the blue line, I think, they replace some of that toughness like we talked about. It's a big, meaty back end, especially on that bottom pair, which allows, Hronek and Hughes to kind of freewheel around a little bit. I think that ideally the team would look to try to add another right shot defenseman at some point through the season. Is that Rasmus Anderson out of Calgary, which, he's likely to be available. He's probably going to be the top asset and will cost a lot. And they don't have a ton of futures at this point that I'm sure they don't want to move on Lekkerimäki or Vilander as we saw last year. So it'll be difficult for them to really improve that throughout the season. But, Rutherford, that guy, he's never met a deal that he didn't think he could get done. So it wouldn't surprise me if they make incremental improvements to that blue line, or, closer to the deadline within a month or two, that they make that kind of big splash to really improve that back end. Because I think that is probably the weaker spot right now.
They seem to think that Desharnais has another level to get to because he's played so few NHL games and he's got that incredible size and frankly, some mobility as well. Do you think Desharnais is more than just a third paired defenseman? Or are you buying the Kool-Aid, drinking the Kool-Aid on what they're pitching there on Desharnais?
I think it's easy to say that when you bring a guy in, that it's like, we think he's got more to give, and not to say that they don't believe that, right? And I've actually been impressed with their pro scouting of late too. So maybe they're right. The player that we've seen so far out of him is very, I would say it's limited. It's physical. Like you said, he can skate fairly well, especially for a man his size. He can snap an outlet pass, but nothing creative. But do I think he could play 16 minutes a night on a playoff team? Yeah, I think that he could probably be that. But wouldn't you rather him be your seventh guy? And I think that would be a better spot for him to be someone who steps in a really physical series, or if there's an injury, that's a great depth piece to have for you. But yeah, maybe he has himself a great offseason and he comes in and he's even a little more quicker and he can handle some of it's the handling the pressure on retrievals under duress, making quick, smart plays, especially when things get tight and faster, rather than just, going for the cross check, going for the body check.
Of those six guys that we know, Forbort and Desharnais are definitely the fifth and sixth best defensemen, but do they owe it to themselves to be a little bit more mobile? Like Soucy and Myers get around a lot better than Forbort and Desharnais, I think. Is that just going to be too big and lumbering on one pair to have those two guys?
Yeah, and it also brings up the question, is Tyler Myers like a legitimate number 4 defenseman at his age now? He did have the best season with the Canucks last year, so there's hope, but he's not a young man anymore, and the legs will slow down a bit for him too. So that's where kind of the question marks become at that 4, 5, 6 spot. Is that adding some more speed and skill there to kind of knock everybody down a peg, I think would be really, really useful, because you're right, that Forbort Desharnais bottom pairing, it'll be punishing. But imagine they get trapped on an icing call against the first line of somebody too. Right? And then
I'd almost be more interested in them in the playoffs. I'm a little bit worried about 1-82 with them, right?
Yeah.
Like the playoffs do get a little bit more old schooly, where I think the reach and the physicality is useful. But my goodness, like second Sunday in February, I don't know that sounds as appetizing to me,
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, it's a lot of questions still to be answered. Do you think that the wingers have the potential to live up to the expectation that people have of them? Like, is there a guy that's going to give his career best a 10-goal bump, a Heinen or Sherwood or whoever?
I like Jake Debrusk to have a career year.
Yeah.
I think, he's flashed it so many times throughout his career and then run into an injury or ran into a cold spell. I think this is going to be a really excellent opportunity. As far as age curves go, he's right in the prime of his career. Like, this statistically should be his best season, and he's going to be airlifted in to either play with Pettersson, which will be great. Or I think he could also be just like a tremendous fit next to Miller and Besser. And that would be disappointing for Pettersson, as he's been looking for that winger to play with. But if the glove fits, put it on. And then he's going to get the top power play spot too. So there's going to be an opportunity for him. I think he can score 30 goals. I think he can break 60 points. That he's kind of that marquee signing that needs to step in. Now, it's never easy for a player when they first moved locales, especially for the first time in his career. It's probably going to be challenging. It often is. So maybe he really pops in the back half, which is fine, because they really want, what they need is down the stretch and in the playoffs anyways. So I do think he's going to have a big year, but Heinen, a kid who's been, connected to the Canucks for a lot of years, that they've been interested in him. I think he's happy to be coming here. He's kind of that kind of chippy, grindy skill player. And then, of course, the signing that I might like the most is Daniel Sprong too. Just it's so the low risk, high upside, and all this kid does is know how to score goals while playing 10 or 12 minutes a night. So if he's going to mix and match around the lineup, get some second power play time, that he's one of these guys that you can basically, pencil in for 20 goals if he gets enough shots on net.
Assuming that Debrusk and Pettersson play together, and they did make mention of that on July 1st, that they felt they had to go get a winger for Pettersson. Assuming Debrusk and Pettersson play with each other, who would you like to see on the other wing?
I think it's going to be a mix and match situation as they find chemistry and they look to see which player fits with who. But right off the hop, I think it's going to be between Heinen and Sprong. I think that, Hoglander is going to get a look there as well. He might get a look up on that wing on the top line. Suter will be around there too. So it's going to be really interesting throughout the preseason and early season, which pairs we know which pairs are going to gel together, but then those third wheels on those top six lines are going to be up for grabs. And then, because you have to think that third line is pretty well chiseled in stone. Now, I mentioned before Debrusk potentially being a really nice fit with Besser and Miller. And if that's the case, like, is Pettersson going to be better served to play with Garland and Joshua? I just think that there's so many combinations that could happen with Vancouver's top nine this year that it's going to be hard to really pin down. But yeah, I like Sprong to kind of be the front runner for that spot.
It's the first time in a long time I remember a preseason which I'm legitimately intrigued by what they're going to tinker with, because they actually have options. They previously, it's been sort of written in stone because there's been no options available to them. But I kind of want to watch the preseason games just to see how all the different combos look.
Yeah, exactly. We complain about the preseason. It runs way too long, but this year they actually have there's spots to be had, and there's chemistry to be made.
Yeah, we've talked about it already. Probably no real battle for roster spots. Like, the 23 looks locked in, but where all the chess pieces fit with each other, I think, is the intrigue. Let's ask you our poll question, Cam. Is it fair to expect 20 goals from Quinn Hughes this season?
No, I don't think it's fair to expect it. 20 goals is a lot of goals for a defenseman. And, especially for someone like him who hasn't been known as a goal scorer basically his entire career, even as a youth player. So to step up as he did last year and start firing more pucks on net, which is what we've been asking for. It's like his shot has gotten to a point now where it's like, just put it on net, like, get it up. You can get it through. It's got enough snap to it. He's not a big one-time guy, but he can get it through with accuracy. But I think that you can hope for 15. If he hits 20, there's a decent chance that he's pushing closer to 100 points than he was last season. And that's going to be another, massive season and potentially another Norris Trophy.
It's he's a committed guy, though. And that gives you confidence that he could, reach highs that we haven't seen before. On the other side, the pressure only gets bigger and bigger. He's been asked a lot about, being the cover guy on EA and getting the acclaim that so many Canucks fans wanted for him for so long. He's underappreciated. He's in the Makar company and finally wins the Norris. And so he's getting the shine now. Do you think it affects him at all?
I don't think so. I think that he's grown up with kind of a spotlight on him too, and that family in general, right? Like he's used to the pressure cooker. I think that he thrives on it. They put the C on his chest, and all of a sudden he pops off for a career year. Like that's pressure too, right? And he handled it, seamlessly. I think he's a pro's pro. I don't think that pressure will impact him at all, really. And I do expect him to go out and push another 90+ point season this year. Like we talked about statistical prime, like he's still coming into his own. Like I think we could see another little level, like 100 points isn't out of the question for him, especially if that top power play can really click. If Pettersson can return to being a 100+ point player, those assets there, they can score a lot of goals, and he's obviously the best of the bunch.
He got a little bit tired, I thought, towards the end of the season.
Yep.
The walking the line stuff, it diminished a little bit. That to me, that's going to be the challenge. Can he look like, I think he's going to get shot out of a cannon in October and November. It'll be interesting to see if he can keep that up in February when it's a grind. It's tough, and he's going to be, of course, a target for a lot of people.
Yeah. For sure. And that's what I mean, like adding another offensively inclined defenseman to that blue line to take a little bit of that off of him too. So he doesn't have to play 24, 25, 26 minutes a night all the way through the season, because you do want him fresh come playoffs. And you want someone there that can, handle if he needs a night off or something like that, can slip up and move into that top power play position, or at least move the puck out of his own end with his feet or his hands, because there's not a ton of that on the back end.
There is not.
No.
You're right.
Let's get into your wheelhouse on prospects as we approach Young Stars on the weekend in Penticton at the South Okanagan Event Center. Cam, first of all, I see Elite Prospects has done its rankings of prospect pools across the National Hockey League. Let them know, where did we have the Vancouver Canucks, and how do you feel about their prospect pool at large?
21st is where Vancouver landed, and not a terrible spot, especially for a team that, just won their division and went on a decent playoff run, and spent assets to get there, right? Is moving draft picks, moving prospects out. It's they have two potentially impactful players, obviously, in Lekkerimäki and Tom Wilander. And then it's a substantial drop off, depending on if you consider Silovs a prospect or not still, because I think he's obviously an NHLer at this point too. But it has some more interesting players. Atu Ratu, I think, can be an NHL player. Archie Baines, Linus Karlsson, these guys can all play NHL games, NHL minutes. They'll probably play those minutes this year too. It's kind of on the blue line is where there's a lot of question marks behind Wilander. And this is going to be a really, really big season for him too, to really solidify himself as an elite defensive prospect, because the transition from the Swedish Junior League straight to the NCAA just doesn't happen for kids that are just drafted. Like he's literally a trendsetter, a pioneer. And it had its hiccups for him. He put up decent counting stats, but that's just part and parcel for the team that he was playing on as well. So, at Young Stars, Wilander won't be there. We're looking at Lekkerimäki to be an absolute head and shoulders above the competition type player, especially if he wants to see some NHL minutes this year, is that he should be coming in, like we talked about Quinn Hughes being shot out of a cannon. I'm hoping Lekkerimäki's shot out of a cannon in Penticton too. And really kind of lock in, like, I am ready to score a lot of goals in the AHL and maybe push for NHL minutes. But the depth in Vancouver it does fall off fairly quickly after kind of those first 3, 4, 5. Elias Pettersson on the blue line, I'm a big fan of his as well. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do in Penticton and kind of rattle some bones and
I was going to ask you, give me a stealthy prospect that you like from the Canucks pool, but is it EPD? Would that be the guy?
It is.
Yeah,
it is for sure. And when I did the Canucks write up for the prospect series, I got some like oohs. And when I put him at number 4, and I would have had him at 3, but I had to put Silovs there at 3. I really think that he's going to be like that homegrown fan favorite, tough as nails, number 4 guy that
number 4 guy.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay.
I think he's got second pair upside. And I don't even think it's that much of a stretch. Like I know a lot of people think that he's somewhat limited offensively, but that's not what you pay him for. Like he can move the puck well enough. Sure, he'll blow an outlet pass where he'll miss a guy by a few feet times, but I think as he acclimates to the North American pro game, that'll come, and it'll just be that straightforward kind of meat and potatoes player. But like, he is so much fun. He's like exuberant with his defensive play and his physicality, and he's just off ice too. Like, players gravitate to him. Like, he's a funny kid. He's got a great personality on him. I really think that he's a smart kid too. He's got a good head on his shoulders when you talk to him. I think he's going to be a player. I think he's got definite second pair upside, and one of these ones that you absolutely need to find in the second, third round, right? That those type of players that you can come up, you can pay them their $875 for a few years. They don't cost you a ton of money, but they can make a big difference. And especially in the spring, when, like you said, it gets back to being that old school throwback hockey, he's going to thrive when he's like 23, 24.
His feet are good enough. He can make the turns and maintain gap control and all that stuff.
It's going to be a process. It's going to be a process. He's going to get danced in the AHL this year as a rookie. We saw it even in the handful of shifts he got last year down the stretch, is that, there were some really bright moments for him, but there was also, he got turnstiled a little bit too, speed off the rush. And he's going to have to learn, and he's going to have to adapt, and he's going to get that four-way mobility up and his pivoting. But I do think that there's a strong enough base there that he can build upon it. And like I said, he's a hard worker and he's a smart kid. And I've always said it, if you are smart and you can work hard, you can improve and be a defenseman like that. You don't need to be super skilled to succeed in that position.
Amazing.
Boy, after listening to that, I think the biggest complication will be, what are we going to call him when he gets here? He's going to need to find a nickname that isn't Petey.
DPD. Yeah. DPD.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We can workshop, but we got some time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We do have some time.
What's his middle initial? Things like that.
And the best news is we've got some time too, Cam, every Tuesday on this program going forward here during hockey season. Thanks for this, buddy, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for having me, boys.
Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekerson Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.